Hey guys, I'm here today with a video on product photography, and I'm gonna say it now, it's windy, so if you hear those noises, don't mind it. Now if you know anything about me, you certainly know that I am quite into photography, and I decided to make a video on product photography today because I was actually taking pictures of something for a class that was not photography related, but that's a different story. And I'm like, hey, I should make a video about this. So I asked a couple of friends and they're like, yes, I would watch that. So here we are with a video on product photography. To start things off, you're going to need a couple of things. Number one of which is a camera. This is my parents' camera because I'm using mine to film, and this one doesn't shoot 1080p. Number two, a big giant white sheet of paper. Now, it has to be fairly big because this is actually going to be your background. Next up, you're going to need some subjects. Now, I have a couple here, one of which is this white camera, which you'll see why it's white is important soon. And then I've also got a couple of CPUs here that we can photograph. The next thing you're going to need is some lights. Now, because I'm using all of mine, I'm just going to use those, and I'm just not going to show you them. But you don't have to use proper like LED panels like I have. If you just get some cheap desk lamps, those will work perfectly fine. And the softer the light they put out, the better. So these are actually a very challenging thing to work with because they're such a hard light. The next thing you're going to need is some duct tape. Now I just got white stuff, but it doesn't really matter what color it is, it's just for securing the paper. The final thing that you'll probably want if you're using proper lights like I am is a tripod. You don't always need it, but sometimes you do, so it's good to have. So the first thing you need to do before you even pick up your camera is you need to set up your background. Now when you set up your background, you want to pick somewhere that's near a monitor or a wall, on a desk. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to take your paper and you're not going to hold it this way unless your object is very thick, but you're actually going to hold it this way. So you're going to take your duct tape here and you're going to put it maybe 6 inches off the ground at most, I'd say. Then you're going to take another piece of duct tape and you're going to secure the bottom. And when you do this, you gotta make sure you push the paper back so it kind of creates a more round 90 degrees turn rather than being out like this so much. Not sure how well you can see, but if you push it back, it'll give you a much more flat space to work with. So I'm just gonna tape that down there. And that's your backdrop. That's everything for setting that up. Now, as far as lights go, I personally, for the most part, like to keep them on the desk without a tripod, but if necessary, it's good to raise them up a bit if you need to. The very first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make sure that your camera is white balanced for the lights you have. Because if you don't do that, bad things will happen. So, in preparation for this, you're also going to want to have your exposure set, so just throw a little object there on the desk, just so you can pull exposure. And you're going to want this in full manual, because once you find your settings, there's no point in changing them. So once you've got your products set up, you've got to make sure that there aren't any shadows on them. Okay? That's a very important bit because it will make your items look like they're kind of just floating in space. So to do that, you're just going to take a second light and you're going to point it at it and it will basically eliminate the shadows. If you use a softer light, it'll actually be considerably easier to get rid of the shadows. And then at that point, it's just as simple as exposing for your product, filling the frame as best you can, because there's not any background in there, so there's no point keeping some background. You just fill the frame with your object and shoot. That comes out looking very pro like that. Those things are all good if you're shooting products that are not white, once you move to something white like this camera, it gets much more difficult because you have to make sure that you don't lose it to the background. The easiest way to make sure you're not losing your product to the background is you try your best to illuminate only the background as thoroughly as you can. So that's the first part. You illuminate the background very well. Careful at doing that. Make sure you don't have hot spots, otherwise that could look weird. And once you've done that, your image will end up looking somewhat like this. So if your frame, like when you're looking through it, looks kind of like that, that's what you want. Now you're going to be able to see your product by taking a third light and using that just for your product. You're probably going to have to adjust your exposure a bit, but what you're trying to do is illuminate in front of it, the background in front of your product, as well as the product itself. So I find it's easiest to put it just above the camera and have something like this here reflective barn door bouncing some light onto the ground in front of it. So that will make it look something like that. That gives you a super clean, very good looking way to take pictures of white objects. Another very challenging scenario is shiny objects. The first scenario I'm going to show you is something like my watch here. So if you'll notice, if you just kind of point your light at the product like this and then shoot a picture, you'll get a really big glare on the product where you can actually see the light. So to fix this, you just kind of have to fiddle about with the angles of your lights. And to solve this, I find it helps to put one kind of behind your subject a bit and one in front of it. So I'm going to use 3 lights here, like this. Take that. When taking pictures of something curved like this, something you'll have to deal with is highlight spots. Now, if you're using a very soft light, which I'm not, so this doesn't work very well, you can actually take a black object, like a CD case, and you can actually block the light a bit. And that will help significantly to get rid of highlight spots. Another thing when photographing rounded, shiny things, again with glare, is if you notice on the little bottom bit of the watch, there is a reflection of the paper. To get rid of this, you can't do anything while keeping it in the same position that it is. You actually have to put it like this, and because you're on a seamless white background, it doesn't really matter. For example, if I have it set up like this, and it's vertical, and I want that shot where it looks like it's laying on its side. Now, I'm not going to worry about glare too much here. This is about more of the framing. You can get basically the same effect just by messing with the angle, and it looks almost the same. Again, if you ignore like the little bit of duct tape in the background, but that's not the point. The point is, you just kind of have to fiddle about until you get it right. Shiny things are especially difficult to photograph because they reflect so much light. Sometimes, and when they have shadows like this, it makes them look very, very dark. So having as many sources of light is very, very helpful. And this light's dying, so that's great. Anyways, I'm gonna do it this way even though it's like super wrong. Having lots of sources of light to create lots of reflections helps a ton. If you look at this one, you'll notice that because you can see those 2 distinct lines from the 2 lights that I have on it, it makes it look much brighter. And that's really most of what you need to know when taking product photos. And if you haven't noticed throughout this video, most of what you have to do is just adjusting and trying and not being worried about not getting it right the first time, because it's really hard to do that, because you have to make sure you smooth out your shadows, and you've got to make sure the background is completely blown out, you've got to make sure your subject is still lit well, and it's juggling a lot of things, and it takes a lot of trial and error. So it really does take practice, and I'm still certainly not perfect at it, but those are just some sort of guidelines to keep in consideration when taking product photos. Thank you all for watching. This video was great fun to make, and I hope it helped you take some good product photos. Now, if you did like the video, hit the thumbs up button, leave a comment how I can improve future videos, subscribe to my channel for updates when I upload other videos. That sounded kind of redundant. And thanks for watching. Bye!